there's an 030 tip in here somewhere. You know, one of the things I like about the Multimatic 220 is it has some storage space. One of my pet peeves is that I fill it full of crap and I can't find what I'm looking for. It's time to fix that problem today. So this is the space that I'm working with. Basically, from the base to the bottom of the spool wheel and the full length. My plan is to make an organizer with a number of trays in it that keeps all my welding supplies separate, which is a challenge because this is a multi-process unit that does MIG, TIG, and stick. I'm using 20 gauge mild steel sheet metal for this project. And as you can see, I've got a bunch of hand tools laid out on my table. Why the hand tools? Well, I've got a few comments on some of the projects I did stating that, yeah, this is a cool project, but I don't have that nice equipment that you have in your shop. Well, I can say this, I haven't always had this nice equipment, and I still did projects. Like this wheel stand. Yeah, I use my nice big brake press, but you could cut the sides independently and weld them on. It's only 2 extra welds. And sometimes I'll use a plasma cutter or a bandsaw or my stomp shear to cut metal. But a sawzall, or one of my favorite tools was my father's old jigsaw with a real fine blade in it, they work great. So for this project, I'm only using standard hand tools. I'm using an electric shear for my first cut, which is 5 3/8 by 24 inches. This shear has a capacity of 18 gauge. So I'm making my first 2 bend lines and my last cut line off of this piece. My bends are going to be a little over 3 inches. I got 17-inch long piece here and then another 3-inch bend. So this will be a cut line. Okay, so now I'm using my handy dandy vise to make my 2 bends on the ends of this thing. This 20 gauge will bend pretty easily. Once I get it down a little bit, I'm just going to use my dead blow hammer and finish the bends. It's actually a little overbent. No worries. We put it in the unbending machine. Oh, yeah. Looks like 90 to me. I need to remove and relocate the extra MVP plug. All right, I got my first piece fit in the machine. Now I need to figure out how many storage shelves I need. So I made a list of the different consumable items that I want to store, and I came up with about 12. To make 12 shelves, I need 5 more dividers inside here. All right, my dividers are going to be 3 1/16 by 4 7/8 inches, which is a little shorter than the piece we just made and will create the 1/2-inch lip for my top shelf. So I'm going to mark them off only 2 at a time. I don't want any accumulated tolerances getting in place here, because by the time I get to the end one, I might be pretty crooked. So I switched to the straight line shear for the rest of the cuts. Now the only difference is your measurements, because you do end up with about a 1/4 inch piece of drop off every time you make a cut. Sometimes you have to true up your hand cutting. That looks better. I took my 17-inch length, divided it by 6, came up with 2.8 roughly. So I've marked off where my dividers need to go. Warning: read and follow all labels and your owner's manuals. Now it's time to lay out how I want my trays to work. My primary concern is accessibility. Starting from the bottom, I know I need to clear the bottom lip of the welder, which is 1 3/8 inches. I need enough room here to get my fingers in and out with whatever's stored in there. That will determine the position of my middle shelf. And as you can see, I needed a little bit extra room there as well, so my top shelf is going to be made a little bit narrower. Another thing that's going to help me out is that my shelves will be mounted at an angle, so that whatever's stored in there will roll to the front and make it easier to pull out. My top shelf is going to be 16 15/16 by 3 1/8. And I'm going to use my little electric hand shear again for this material. A couple ways you can make the bend in that top shelf. I could use these bending pliers or a seaming pliers, and I could just clamp it onto the piece here and just make small bends along this long bend line. And eventually I'd get a 90-degree bend in it. I'm going to use a different method. I've clamped it to the table, which has a nice hard 90-degree edge on it. I'm just going to use my body hammer, and I'm going to go along this edge and a little bit at a time keep increasing my bend until it's 90 degrees. That will give me a much tighter bend radius. The middle tray needs a 5/8 inch, 60-degree bend, which I can do with the seaming pliers. The bottom tray bend is 1 3/4 inches, which is too deep for the pliers, so I'll be hammer forming those. All right, one slight small oversight that I had. I place this inside there to mock it up, and I figured out that I need to clearance cut this center baffle for the door latch. Now clean up the sharp edges with my small belt sander. For welding my trays in, I might be in a position where I have to long arc some of my joints. I decided to turn my machine up to the 18 gauge setting, but then I fine-tuned my wire feed speed down. This will give me a little bit hotter arc when I have to long arc. We'll shoot a little black paint on it here in the paint booth so it matches the inside of the machine. Now doesn't this look better? I've got my MIG tips, my MIG nozzles, my spool gun tip spool gun nozzles. I've got TIG consumables, collet bodies for 2 different sizes and their nozzles. I got tungstens. I even have batteries for my welding helmet. Everything that this multi-process machine needs. Oh, and I relocated my multi-voltage plug to the back of the machine with an 1/8 inch rivet. And make sure you can see all your warning labels. If not, move them to a clear space. Next time on Real Garage, I'm unscrewing my rear end screw up that I did on season 3. That should be fun.